Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. It's Pajama here from Traditionally Inspired Meaningful Art. It's been a while. We haven't had a Friday sews in a couple of weeks, so I wanted to catch you up on what's been going on in the sewing room, give you some updates and what is to come. So the last time you saw me, I was actually just finishing up my collaboration with Sarah from Naughty Gnome Crafts, and we had collaborated on using a pattern that we've had in our stash. I chose Butterick 6705, and we were going to use that pattern and add some extra touches, make it a bit different than what we've sewn in the past. So that was my birthday dress, so I put that video out. And the very next thing that I was supposed to be working on was the wedding guest dress. I went to a good friend of mine's wedding at the top of September, so just that first weekend, Labor Day weekend, and we were out in Philadelphia, so I was working really hard on this dress. I am actually going to have a whole video dedicated to the making of this dress because of the trials and tribulations as well as the triumphs. I think it deserves a video all on its own, so I'll go into more detail, but I'll definitely have it in the background while I record this video because it was that much hard work and it deserves a little bit of shine at the moment. Now, the dress actually did not turn out as I expected, so I didn't end up wearing the dress at all. I went in my closet and actually found another made-for-me dress that I actually wore to my brother's wedding reception. So we had dresses made as part of the bridal party, and it was just the perfect fit. So that's what I ended up going with. While we were out in Philly, I got to go to my friend's house, and it was just so beautiful. Couple of things to note there. He has a vintage sewing machine, a vintage Singer sewing machine in his office that I was drooling over. And I mean, if ever, Johnny, if ever you find another vintage sewing machine like that, please just get it for me and ask me to cash app you the funds, please. It was so beautiful. Another thing that they had in their home that just made my heart sing were two of my art pieces. So I remember back in college, I had painted this sort of like bulb painting during senior year. I was really into mixed media and just trying a lot of different things, really experimenting. And I made this canvas, and after I made it, I didn't have anywhere to put it, and I wasn't so in love with it anymore. Johnny, my friend, has always been a lover of the arts, and I remember I think he had an interest in it, so that was gifted to him. But to see it in his home and like just in such a pristine and prime location, especially surrounded with all of the other amazing artwork that they had in their home, I was like, I feel like a real artist. It was so awesome. They also had another one of my pieces that was, it was like chalk pastel. I made this, I remember I was a resident assistant. I like made this in my dorm room. It must have been my junior year of college, I think. And I did not like it. It was of this beautiful building that we have on my alma mater's campus, the Cathedral of Learning. And I was like trying to make it all moody and beautiful. I think I ended up folding it up because I was just gonna like trash it. And I remember he saw it and he was like, "What do you mean you're gonna trash it? No way, like this is awesome." And they got it framed, like it looked like a professional frame. So it looked so spectacular. Again, just seeing the artwork up among all of their other beautiful pieces. It was awesome. So anyways, the wedding was phenomenal. I mean, just the perfect end of summer, pre-fall weather. The air was crisp. There was a beautiful breeze. There was the backdrop of the Philadelphia skyline. It was an outdoor wedding. Everyone just had such great energy. There was an ice cream truck during the reception, and kids got to like run around free, and it was just filled with such lovely, lovely, lovely people and happiness, and I couldn't be happier for them. There were random fireworks also throughout the city. So you like have the wedding happening and then these random fireworks for Labor Day, which was, it was just perfect. Like, you can't even pay people to put fireworks shows on like that during your wedding and make it look that beautiful. So it was just a phenomenal night. And what I learned there was, I think I'm okay, like I'm good on sewing for, you know, these like special occasion wear. I'm so okay in the department of formal attire, because reality is the amount of those formal events I've been going to recently is sort of dimming down, right? And I think anytime I have a big event, I'm like, I gotta make something. And the reality is I probably have something in my closet that would work just fine. So when it turned out that this wedding guest dress that I was working on was not gonna work, the fact that I was able to pick up something so quickly and just kind of move about my business was a real indication to me that I don't have to add that pressure and stress on myself for these big moments, right? That I'm making them out to be in my mind. The dress that I wore was fantastic. And then I ended up taking my S8875 for the day after's events where we went to go and visit them at home. So I did get to wear something me made. I also brought my silk tiger shirt and I just threw that on over like a maxi dress that I had. So I did have some me made items with me. I just didn't end up going with the actual wedding guest dress for the day of the wedding. And it actually ended up being a lot less stressful because of that. And I wish I just would have known that I wasn't going to actually end up wearing this dress a bit sooner. And that way I didn't have to have all of those sleepless nights leading up to the event. So during the sewing of my wedding guest dress, my sewing machine broke. Just broke. So what I think actually happened is I put on the plate that has just the singular hole so that my fabric wasn't going to get eaten up and I wasn't going to get a lot of puckers. I just wanted to be on the safe side for some of the detailing that I was putting on the wedding guest dress. So in doing so and changing the needle plate on my sewing machine, I think I might have knocked the actual bobbin case holder off kilter. And when I went to actually sew, the needle just nicked it and broke off like a small little piece of the back of it. And I don't know the mechanics of it, but of course, knowing me, you know, I like to fix stuff. So I went ahead and removed those 2 screws to lift up the needle plate. And that's when I noticed that the bobbin case had been chipped. But I tried to like fix it back, you know, reposition it, watched a couple of YouTube videos to figure out how to do it, but it wouldn't work. It wouldn't like the machine would not loop the bobbin thread around anymore to actually sew a stitch. So that was a bust. In came in my handy dandy Old Faithful Singer machine. And you know what, friends? I love my Burnett, but when I got back on my Singer, I was like, man, I missed you. I missed you, you know? I did miss the knee lift from my Burnett, don't get me wrong. There are some features like the knee lift as well as the automatic thread cutter. You know, there are some things that you're gonna miss when you're no longer using a computerized machine, but I don't know if anything really beats the Old Faithfuls. Let me know in the comments down below what your thoughts are on that, if you have both a computerized machine and something that's a bit less so. After losing not only to this dress, but then also going down with my machine, we went away, went to the wedding, came back. As I returned from the wedding, I was inspired because I'd received my order from Wawak, which I will get to later on in the video. But one of the things that I ordered was beautiful spoolie thread, okay? I got the Swirl Thread. I remember seeing this from Michelle Sews Again, and she had mentioned that she got a couple of spools of their swirl colors, and they have so many different color ranges. But for this one, it has a ton of the primary colors and some secondary in there. It's got the green, but I thought it would be perfect for none other than my Zimmerman inspired, tiered, very heavy linen dress. I then was using my serger because I know that you're able to actually gather fabric on your serger. It's something that I've been doing quite a bit recently. However, I also know that you should be able to gather as you attach it to a straight piece of fabric. And I was like, that's exactly what I need. I want to be able to feed through the bottom layer of a tier and attach it directly onto the tier above it in one foul swoop. I thought, this is genius. All I have to do is test it out. I tested and tested and tested some more. The entire sewing room was just chaos, full of fabric, full of threads everywhere. And I finally got the tension settings to be just right. I mean, it was awesome. I was seeing gathers everywhere. I felt lovely. And then I went to actually execute that on this fabric, this dense, heavy fabric. And I don't know if it's the length of how much fabric it was, if it was the way that I was holding the fabric to feed it through. I couldn't tell you. All I can say is that it didn't work. And then I took the out and I seam ripped it, serger thread. I seam ripped all of it. And then I did it again. Do you see any serger thread? No, because I then had to seam rip it again. I was so mad. There was so much wasted thread, and the only reason why I seam ripped it instead of going ahead and just cutting off the serged edge is because I have cut the widths of these fabrics to exactly the length that I need. It just needs to work. People, here with this orange, which is going to be the very last tier of this very heavy maxi gathered linen dress, there's about 10 yards of fabric in this bottom tier. As I'm saying that out to you right now, I don't even know why I'm trying to do that, but that was how all the math worked out. And that's a lot of fabric, in case you were wondering. It's a ton of fabric, and it made me really upset that the thing that I had tested out and tested yet again, and it just won't work for the actual fabric. So I really do think maybe it's the weight, maybe it's how I'm feeding it through, how heavy it is, versus how short I did the test fabrics on. Couldn't tell you, didn't work. So I'm now sitting down just contemplating whether or not I'm going to have to do 2 rows of gathering stitches on 10 yards of fabric just to begin my journey to making that dress. I really don't want this dress to kind of sit in all of these cut up pieces. Even though we're moving into fall, I think the colors would still work really well for fall, and it's going to be such a full, big dress that I think it's absolutely fine to wear it in the fall, especially with all of the dopamine dressing that everyone's talking about now on the catwalk and on the runways. But I am going to have to take that project slow. It's already been a slow sew. It's going to be a real slow sew, I think. So that's what's in store with that project. So lots of fails just compounding on themselves, and I was beginning to feel really taken aback. I was beginning to get overwhelmed with not only my sewing practice, but with other things going on in life in general. And I then turned to cotton stretch fabrics, and I was like, you know what? You know what's not going to fail me? I'm going to go ahead and make some more little pants for my kids, because that's not going to fail me. Obviously, this is so simple. This is great. It's a stretch fabric. This is awesome. Well, let me tell you this. I used a vintage children's pattern that I've used in the past. That's what I used to make this lovely pair. I made these last winter. Yeah, last winter. So they were beginning to get a bit short. So I made this pair for my daughter. They were beginning to get a bit short. However, they fit her everywhere else. But what did I do? I said, you know what? It's a new year, right? It's almost been a year since I made these. I'm just going to make the whole thing a bit bigger, you know? So I expanded the pattern, right? I just added a bit more width to it. Can you see? That's how much I added. I didn't test this out or anything. I just cut a whole bunch of pants with this new size that I felt like, yeah, that'll work. I'm just gonna go ahead and make them more like joggers. So I put a cuff at the bottom, and I was like, that'll be fine. I even cut the waistband a little bit larger, you know. I'm someone who doesn't sew too often for my kids, so if I do, because they grow out of stuff so fast, I want to make it last, you know. But really, any good seamstress would know that you don't just make things that much bigger and then not test them, right? But I was so upset, and I just knew this was gonna work, so I was just cutting them all out. I cut out like 4 different pair of pants for my daughter. And then I tried them on her, and they are so big and so baggy. But because I put the jogger style cuff on the bottom, if I wanted to make this smaller, I would legitimately have to cut off the cuffs, then take it in, and then put the cuffs back on. And because I tried a new method for the inside of the waistband, I actually serged the elastic right into the top of the waistband, then just folded it over once and did a nice zigzag stitch on the outside. So I can't even like cut a little bit and then reduce the elastic. I would have to unpick the zigzag stitching and then pick off some of the serged edge here to take that in. Again, all things that I'm not willing to do at this time. So I've put them on her and I just fold it over and wear a longer shirt over it. She's so enamored by the prints that she hasn't been too upset with me about this, but she is quite opinionated, my 3-year-old, and she might say something one day. I don't know, but for right now, while she's not saying anything, we wear them. Look at them, it's so cute. So I took out a lot of the cottons that I've been hoarding and saying like, it's okay, I'll make something for my daughter. I did. And I wanted some new pajama bottoms for my son, so I also made him a pair. He's 4, but he's really tall. And I had this awesome astronaut brushed cotton fabric that I picked up, like the flannels from Joann's. I picked this up a year or 2 years ago, possibly. And then I had some left over of the faux cashmere from Joann's as well. And I made him some lovely ones. His fit pretty well for my daughters. They're noticeably baggy. So all of these cotton fabrics are actually from the Pop collection at Joann's. So I've been picking them up here and there in the clearance section and in the remnant section. So it felt really nice to just have some of those sewn up. But indeed, they were not necessarily wins, and they did in the moment feel like fails when I tried them on her, and I was like, oh, why did you increase the size so much? Who told you to do that? As you can see, I wasn't really having much luck in the sewing department, so I just needed to like take some deep breaths in and then exhale really slowly and decide what my next move was going to be. I then determined, since sewing is not really doing it for me at the moment, what I probably could do is cut out some patterns. Are you okay to hold the rotary cutter, Fatmata? Can you do that? You know, are you in the mood of grading out sizes? Can you do that? So I figured that was my best next course of action, because there are some patterns that I want to get into. There are some patterns that I've recently purchased and then repurchased based on sizing issues that I've had in the past. And I wanted to also get a jump start on some projects that I know I want to sew for fall. Cutting out patterns is not my favorite part of the process, nor is cutting out fabric. So I said, listen, get yourself one step closer. So I cut out 4 patterns. I'm not going to remember the name of the patterns off the top of my head, but one of them is McCall's tiered maxi length dress pattern that I've purchased before, cut out before, but I cut out the wrong sizes. I had the wrong size bracket, and I went ahead and in a recent McCall sale, repurchased the pattern in the size that I needed for the bodice and cut out all of the bodice pieces. I also cut out this gorgeous McCall's pattern. I had gotten this at the thrift store. It's M7472, and it's a beautiful raglan style shirt, tunic, and it's beautiful. I love the design of this raglan because it sort of has a beautiful curve, whereas many raglans just go really straight across. So I cut this out and I hacked it to make the dress that I'm wearing for you today. So here is the dress. So for those of you, you might notice this fabric. It is the beautiful cotton rayon blend fabric that I recently picked up at Mood Fabrics for my birthday haul, and I really love it. So I ended up digging into this and I turned it into a maxi length dress. So here again is the pattern. They have some really, really beautiful versions on Instagram. So hopefully you can see a lot of the dress, but one of the things that I wanted to do was sort of make it a bit more A-line at the bottom, because I definitely wanted to have a swish factor and I wanted to make sure it went over my hips comfortably. So for the actual pattern, the M7472, they would actually, it's a slimmer sleeve. So I went ahead and expanded my sleeve and just added elastic to the end there to give it a bit of a poof. And they also have a button placket, which I most times love, but it wasn't that kind of shirt dress. So I wanted to do something easy. So I went ahead and hacked this pattern. Now, the fabric that I was using is a border print. So you have this beautiful, the floral detailing at the bottom, and then it kind of comes up to this awesome, what would you call this color? Merlot? Would you call it, aubergine? What? It's like a maroon. It's like a really deep wine, like, this beautiful color. It just radiates up to whatever this color is, whether it's like a really dark burgundy, a really deep maroon, that sort of family. And I loved it so. I also wanted to play with some of the design features and then cut it so that I had a bit of the flowers up here at the sleeve cap. I love, again, how the sleeves are cut here. So instead of a raglan that usually would just kind of go straight from under the armpit straight out, usually a very straight line, this one really does have a curve, and it just is the smoothest sort of curve down the shoulder. I really love how it sits on the body. And I made a tie belt. So I just made this with the extra fabric that I had left over. And because the top of the bodice is the solid fabric, I wanted to utilize what I had remaining of the floral design. I put a layer of fleece in the middle of this and stitched on top of it in like, what, 3/8 of an inch. So it looks like a karate belt. I'm not gonna lie. It looks like a karate belt that the kids wear. And I'm okay with that. I am okay with that because it does what it needs to do for me. And I'm not even going to be bothered by that. I did wonder. I was like, are you sure you want to do that? Are you sure? You could just interface it. But the thought of turning on my iron to do the interfacing didn't appeal to me at the time. And I was like, no, this is fine. I don't know if I'm going to regret that. But for right now, it's fine. You let me know if it looks like a karate belt or not. But because I knew that this would be shifting up and down, I did put the belt loops on there. Belt loops are not my favorite thing, but I felt like they were necessary here. May or may not take those off in the future. Not sure yet. So this is the dress. Now the actual fabric, it being a border print, was not long enough to go from head to toe. So I did have to include a seam, but I made sure that I used the solid part of the fabric so you really can't tell, even without the belt, hopefully. For the most part, you can't really tell that there's a seam right here because the fabric is just one solid color. So I felt like that was okay. I also wanted to do some detailing. So they would have you add, come here, come right here. In this pattern, they have you add a separate piece for the button placket. So what that allowed me to do was actually add some flat piping. I really think that I should have taken the time to create a proper piping and put a cord in the middle of this. But I did not want to be bothered with that initial step at the time, but now looking back, it would have just made sure that this piping was equidistant the whole way through. And right now it's a little bit wonky, if you know what I mean. But don't look that close. Don't really worry about that. For the buttons, I use these wooden buttons that I've had in my stash. I had thrifted these a while ago in like a big bag of buttons, and it had 10 of these. So it was enough to go from the very top. I like having my collar closed like this, and it goes all the way down as much as I could go, as far as I could go down on the dress, without feeling uncomfortable. And then from the point where those stopped, I went ahead and added these black snaps that I had in my stash. They are so on snaps, so I went ahead and put that on in the middle of the night last night. And you know what I did in my tiredness? I put 2 outies. Look at that. That's not gonna button. That doesn't work. I was really upset with myself. These are not pop-on ones. These aren't ones that you like press in with the clamp. These are sewn on. So I sat there and hand stitched all of this for nothing. I put them on the wrong way. So there are 4 of them. I am going to have to unpick this and redo it, but that's that. At the very bottom of it, I also included this beautiful little trim detail. I already told you all, I'm all about the trim these days. So I remembered that I had this beautiful, what would you call this? They're not pom-poms. It's not fringe. Oh no, what is tassels? I had this beautiful sort of bone colored tassel fabric, and that's what led me to pick this color for the piping. It's just bias binding that I included there. And I think it turned out nice. It just gives it like a really nice bohemian chic sort of vibe all the way at the very bottom. And it elevates it, I think. Can you see it? Can you see it at the bottom? I hope you can, because I'm just flipping. And here's the belt. I don't really know how I want to tie this belt, I'll be honest. This is my new dress. Again, I was just yearning for a successful make. It'd been too long, and I am really happy with this one. I will say that the actual fabric itself did fade quite a bit in the pre-wash. So the luscious, really beautiful deep color that I wanted to preserve and keep, I mean, in the pre-wash it went away. So that was a little bit disappointing. I think whenever I do my big like mood fabric hauls, they are a real big treat yourself moment, because I don't spend that kind of money on fabric that often. And yeah, so that was a little bit disappointing, but it washes beautifully and it's super soft. But I do notice that because the underside of the linen itself is white, this is just sort of printed on top of it. So you do get throughout the fabric these little flecks of color that are like missing, which I find interesting. But yeah, so it looks a bit more like aged, but then the actual color itself did sort of fade. And I did wash it with light colors. I washed it with some of the other linen fabrics that I had, and some things with deeper color. So I don't actually, like, I really wasn't expecting that to happen, but things like that happen sometimes. Hi friends, so it's Editing Fatmata here. I was just putting together this video, and guess what? It is about an hour long. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to split it up. It's going to be a 2-parter. So you've heard about some of my fails and what caused me to just bury myself away under work and just like getting other stuff done in home life. And sewing was not my usual like sanctuary and safe haven and creative outlet. It was causing me stress. But in the next part of this, I am going to talk to you a little bit about how I cleaned up my sewing space and the things that I did to kind of get myself back on track. Of course, you've already heard about me making this dress as well. So I'm really excited to share some of those additional things with you in the second part. And hopefully you can look for that later this weekend. But I hope that you enjoyed the return to Friday Sews. Thank you again so much to Jen from Today in Jen's Sewing Room for putting together this hashtag where all of us in the sewing community get together and either share or watch and hear what we're doing in our creative spaces. Thank you so much for tuning in. I have certainly missed being on the channel and sharing, and I hope you've missed hearing about what's happening. And I appreciate just your patience. And yeah, we'll keep creativity alive, folks. Have a wonderful day. Stay creative. Bye-bye.